President Obama's 2012 budget proposing $36 billion in loan guarantees to build nuclear power plants. But with the devastation in Japan, there's now talk about a moratorium on nuclear development here. Senator Lamar Alexander is a member of the Subcommittee on Clean Air and Nuclear Safety. The Republican co-sponsored a bill in the last Congress promoting nuclear energy. He joins us from the Hill today. Senator, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Before we start on the question of the future of nuclear energy in this country, what do you know about Fukushima, maybe that we don't already hear?
I don't think I know anything about it. I've just watched what you've watched from a distance, and I see that the concern is whether there's more radioactive emissions at levels that will harm humans that don't blow out to the ocean. If there is, there's a problem. If there's not, then there's not.
Still, the potential for a problem still exists, and as a result, people are now saying that nuclear power in this country is dead. You do not agree?
No, I don't agree that, and I don't hear very many people saying that. We have 104 civilian reactors in the United States. They produce about 20% of our electricity, 70% of our clean electricity. We've operated nuclear navy since the 1950s. We've never had a single death in that whole time from the operation of those 104 civilian reactors or the nuclear navy. And 3 Mile Island, which has been our only real big accident over that time, in that accident, no one was hurt.
So watching Fukushima then, how does it change your view of the industry or regulation, if at all?
Well, it causes me to think we ought to learn everything we can from what's happening in Japan to make our operations as safe as possible. For example, the problem there is not the earthquake, it's the tsunami that knocked out the backup cooling facilities. Perhaps we ought to take a look at our backup cooling facilities in the United States, but it's very unlikely that we'd ever have an earthquake of that size, which is 30 times the San Francisco earthquake plus a massive tsunami.
Obviously, it was assumptions, though, that got the Japanese into trouble. Does a moratorium need to be instituted? Do we need to review some of the 31 reactors here that have similar design? Do we need to start requiring stronger containment vessels?
Well, review, yes. Moratorium, no. I mean, keep in mind, we have explosions in gas plants. We have explosions in coal mines. We have oil spills, and 47,000 of us get killed every year driving cars. We don't stop flying airplanes when there's a crash. Nuclear plants in the United States have been safe. There's never been a death from a commercial nuclear plant in the United States based upon a reactor problem or in the nuclear navy. So we should learn all we can from Japan. But I can't imagine how our country could proceed with enough reliable, low-cost, clean energy without nuclear power.
Yeah, I guess people's worry is you have a coal explosion, some workers get trapped. It's a problem for those workers and maybe those in the immediate area. Radiation literally travels with the wind, and the half-life is 30 years. I can't imagine you equate damage from a nuclear reactor leak with a coal mine explosion.
Well, I can't imagine you would equate that kind of reaction to ignoring the fact that people actually lost their lives in coal mines, that 47,000 people are killed every year in cars. No one's ever died from a nuclear reactor accident in the United States or in the Navy, and no one was even hurt at 3 Mile Island. So this is of concern to us. We need to express sympathy. Japan, watch for it, but so far as I can see, our reactors are operated safely. Our Nuclear Regulatory Commission believes that. Our Energy Secretary believes that. And if we need to make some changes, we should make them. But so far, the record is extraordinarily good.
So given all that, how much fierce are the opposition winds where you are on the Hill? Regardless from the policy, the quality of the policy you're promoting, is it going to get harder to get past in D.C.?
I'm sure it'll get harder because we'll all stop and look and say, what do we need to learn from Japan? And we don't know yet. We need to wait a few days or a few weeks and find out what there is to know. Maybe we can learn something about cooling systems. But the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is reviewing a number of designs right now to make sure that new reactors are safe. We haven't built a new reactor in 30 years in the United States, since 3 Mile Island. So any new reactor in the United States will incorporate all the safety features that we've got, and hopefully in the future we'll be able to continue the record of safety that we've had before.
General Electric owns a large stake in our network, CNBC, NBC Universal. They've been criticized, or I guess the stock's been hurt over the last day because of fears they may be liable for the design of the reactor in Japan. Is that fair?
Well, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know enough about the 3 reactors in Japan that are damaged. All I can say is that when we're faced with something like, we don't live in a no-risk society, whether it's coal mines, oil spills, airplane crashes, when one happens, when we have an unfortunate tragedy, the best thing we can do is to learn from it and make our operations as safe as we possibly can. Fortunately, in the case of United States nuclear civilian reactors and in those we've got in the Navy, since the 1950s, they've been extraordinarily safe, really safer than any other form of energy production that we've had.
I was going to say, we talked earlier this morning about how every method of producing energy is a risk-reward equation. And I wonder if you put the amount of energy we've used on nuclear energy versus the injury or death, could you call it one of the safest forms of production that we have?
Well, if you look, as I've said before, we've killed people in coal mine, gas explosions, every other form of energy. We've not in terms of reactor accidents, either in the Navy or with commercial reactors. So it's a complicated system. It's a system that requires careful management. In the United States, so far, we've had that. We've been very fortunate, and we ought to always work hard to make sure that we have the very best safety practices.
Senator, appreciate your time. Obviously, given what's happened in Japan, you would expect the debate to ramp up here in the States, and it surely has.
It
Senator
should.
Lamar Alexander in Washington. When we come back, Toyota and other automakers